Thank you for everybody that did their homework the last time. I had a chance to look through up till this morning, and some themes came out. It was very interesting that very, very similar themes came through all the responses, and it really fits in with today's session. The whole aim is that we can understand how we are in our own mental space and our mental health, and be able to really recognize signs of emotional stress or mental health changes, and put action in quickly. So this week we're going to be looking at how we react when we are under sort of emotional stress. And then the final week next week will really be all about tools. So there'll be another homework, which is about what you do, which I think is very effective, because actually the things, they are very similar things that come out. So about what you do to keep your mental health in check and healthy. So just to quickly recap on the last time, I think we talked about, what mental health is, the characteristics of a healthy person, how much our culture, our religion, our gender influences our mental health, and then to start to think about things like psychosomatic illnesses, which are very common amongst everyone, and it's important to deal with that. There's something I always talk about, which is childhood trauma. If anybody knows me, I always say that whatever it is that you're experiencing today, if you look back at the pattern over your life, sometimes you can actually pinpoint the actual point where things changed for you. So you might find out that you react in a funny way to somebody saying a particular thing to you, and you will find out that actually it was because when you were in primary three, the person that sat next to you in class did something to you, and it was from that point onwards. It's like, so there's always a pattern. So it's just important to see that. So and also physically in our body, from even children, you can see how they manifest their emotional state in their body. So you see how a child cries when they're hungry, when they're angry, how they behave when daddy says something to them, whether they sit in the corner, go to their bed and cover their head with a duvet. There's always that physical manifestation of our mental state. And it's important for you to know that. And traumatic events in childhood, what we call in medicine, we call them adverse childhood experiences, as ACE, are the root cause of a lot of sort of mental health problems, even physical health problems, even cognitive problems. So cognition in terms of your memory, the way you do your work, just all of those things. Some people will say they're very forgetful. It might be it might be emotional trauma from childhood. So I always say that, when you go back and look at the platform, when you get to this point, I think you should just take a moment, even now, take a moment to think about your childhood experiences. What's your earliest memory? It's funny that some people block out certain memories. They cannot remember anything before the age of 10. Many times you'll find out that there was trauma that they've their mind, their memory has blocked out. They don't want to remember it. It's important to look back and think about whether you suffered any form of, whether it was very positive. You might have grown up in a very positive environment, or you may have suffered sexual abuse from a cousin. That is very common. Or you've suffered, physical abuse where parents are very, very free with beating, which is culture in Africa, where they beat you. When you do anything, they will beat you. And for some children, they're okay, but for many adults, they are traumatized by that. Was there any form of abandonment where your parents were working all the time and you were alone at home? Think about that. Just going back to the assignment that I asked you to do about, how last 18 months has been for everyone, for you, and the way you deal with mental stress and what your patterns are. It was interesting that almost all the responses showed that everyone had been under mental strain over the last 18 months. So we are all smiling. I purposely dressed up in my nice top this morning, put a lot of makeup to let you guys know that sometimes we adorn ourselves and we look great. It doesn't really tell the story. You don't really know what's happening beneath the surface. So every single person has gone through mental stress in the last 18 months. And the way the responses came through, Almost everyone suffers with insomnia when they're stressed. Lack of sleep, headache, tiredness were almost all the responses. So it's very, for me, it's very encouraging that we know what happens when we are under mental stress, because it means that we know what to do when those signs start to show up, and which is what we're going to talk about next week. So now that, in terms of pattern of how we deal with things, I really just want to still talk about that pattern. Now, Princess mentioned a very important thing, that what happened in her childhood made her not to trust, which obviously she's a victor now. She's written a book about it. But it could be trust, it could be paranoia, it could be anything that one is sensitive, that one is really sensitive to. For me, I also had a similar experience in terms of parents separating, but my overriding sentiment was positive from my father. So I always tell people that my father was very positive towards me and always told me I could do anything. So for me, I don't see anything I can't do, because my dad said I could do anything. Obviously, there are the negative effects of the separation and the aggression that my dad sort of showed my mom. But the overriding experience for me is that sort of my dad was very positive towards me. So I tend to go for anything I want, because I know I can go. I can go for anything. But at the same time, there are also negative impacts of how I react to somebody based on my own childhood experiences. And it's about constantly being very aware of your pattern and making sure you use those tools, which we'll discuss, to keep yourself in a good mental space so that you can do everything that you've been put on this earth to do. Right. And as we said, childhood trauma can also affect health as well. So you find that people that suffer with even hypertension, depression, autoimmune diseases, if you look back, there have been serious adverse childhood trauma. Well, let's move on to triggers. Triggers are very, very, very important, because sometimes we don't understand why people react the way they do. And it's important to come from a place of compassion towards ourselves, towards yourself first, before other people. Because sometimes you do something, maybe you have road rage, something happens, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I'm a child of God. How did I behave like that? But have that self-compassion, because you'll find that the triggers that affect your mental health may have to do with things that you've suffered back, a while ago. It's interesting that even our adult experiences don't have as much impact on our behavior as our childhood experiences. So, think about what makes you sad and why. Because what makes you sad, actually, somebody else might say, but that's not a big deal. Why are you sad about that? Who are the people that you actually choose to surround yourself with? Because again, that's something that is linked to your own experiences and how you've adopted that experience. So are the people around you positive or negative? Because some people will actually intentionally surround themselves with people that bully them and talk down to them, because they're actually used to that way of relating. They are used to maybe a parent that was very critical and was just not very nice. And so they are kind of comfortable in that environment, but they might complain about it. But actually, if you put them in a positive environment, their body doesn't get that much excitement. They go back to that negative environment. So who are the people around you? And then, do you struggle to set boundaries in your relationship? So some people are afraid of saying no. Like if you don't want to do something and you just feel like, oh, if I say no, you just can't say no. Why? Why can't you say no? Why do you say yes to everything, even when you don't want to do it? I have patients who come to me and say, I'm overwhelmed, everybody's asking me to do this and I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it. And I always ask, so, okay, why are you doing it? Why can't you say, I don't want to do it? For some people, you find out that it's because they want to be liked, because maybe they were the golden child at home and they're used to that adoration and they don't want anything negative. So look back at how do you set boundaries. Setting boundaries is a very important one. And setting boundaries does not necessarily mean, it's not a negative thing. Actually, it can be very positive. And the boundaries can even just be with your children. It could be with your life partner, your husband, your wife. It could be with anyone. you find that there are people who will do anything for their children. You go into a house and you see kids with their legs on the couch and watching TV, and you see mommy in the kitchen cooking, cleaning, and you're thinking, why? Because they just enjoy that sort of behavior, and the kids sort of use it. And then finally, are you afraid of speaking up? So do you associate, it can even be like with gender. We talked about women and mental health. And one of the things our culture, I hope it's no longer with the younger generation. Sheilma, you can educate us. But one of the things that in my generation and older is that people kind of make it very good thing to have a woman who is meek and docile, who considers her words, who's not too assertive. So when you find women like me and Sadupe or other women who are very vocal and say, I really can't do, then people are looking at you and thinking, calm down, be a Proverbs 31 woman, that sort of thing. So, so it might be that you're afraid of speaking up because, oh, I'm a woman and women are not supposed to speak up. I'll give you an example that really stuck. I mean, I think I've shared this example with all my friends. I don't know if I've shared it with anybody else here. I went to speak at a meeting in Nigeria, and I was on the table with all these men, and I could see that all the women were sitting behind. So I was asking a question. I say, okay, what do you guys think? What do you think? And when the men were answering, when I now pointed to the women at the back, they kind of didn't say anything. And then next thing, one of the men said, oh, they're thinking about going home to go and see their children. And then the women started giggling and they did not say anything. So in my own mind, where I see it, that look, that's a cultural thing. They're supposed to appear that way. And I have to go in with compassion. I can't then go in and say, you must speak up. Oh, they are culturally abusing you, whatever. My role is to say, okay, maybe that's not the way to get the women's opinion. Maybe how to hear the women's voice is another way. But are you afraid of speaking up? And where does that link to? Okay, so I'll do a little pause again. And if anyone has any thoughts about triggers and how you identify your triggers, what triggers your mental health, to not be balanced. Just going back to what your body is telling you. So as I said, every part of your body is affected by your mental state. Every part of it, and you might have like an immediate response. Thanks for those that responded with their assignments. You might have that immediate response to maybe mental stress, maybe something that happened, maybe you lose your job suddenly, or you hear bad news about maybe a diagnosis that you were not expecting. You have that immediate response where maybe your heart is racing, your hands get wet, maybe your tummy starts to hurt, your chest is hurting. Those kind of body changes are necessary because that's the way of the body protecting itself. So adrenaline increases, your body has that response. But if you're in that hyper alert state all the time, then that's where you have the problem. So the fight or flight response is something that is evolutionary, that has been there and put in to protect our bodies, but it shouldn't be something that is permanent, where you are so hyper alert, you're not able to sleep, you're not eating very well, or you're overeating. Then you get things like a headache, which is sustained. You have heartburn, so you have your stomach starts to burn. You're breathing fast all the time. You have things of the risk of heart attacks coming in. Your heart is pounding. You have fertility problems. Everything can go wrong if you have this sustained emotional stress. Blood pressure goes up, diabetes. Basically everything. So I think what to consider is, how does your body react? I know how my body reacts to stress. So I make it a point every day to go through my own routine to make sure that I do not get to that point where one starts to get headache, or tummy starts to hurt, or you're not sleeping properly. So insomnia is a very common response. And as we know, sleep is essential to most of the body's activities. Sleep is a time where your body recharges. It's a time where your body repairs itself. During sleep, you have the most growth. During sleep, you have repair to damaged cells. That's the time God is like God putting you in a state of sleep to fix you so that you're ready for the next day. So if that sleep is broken, then there's an issue. So for me, I didn't do a slide on sleep. I said I would talk about sleep because that was one of the most common responses I got back from the assignment. So my quick question to everyone, which you can put in the box and maybe someone can have a look at the responses, is what is the adequate number of hours to sleep for at night? What do you think is the normal, length of time to sleep? Do you think 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours? What's the optimum number of hours that you need to sleep at night?
Mm.
Um,
6 to 8 hours. Somebody said 6 hours, 7 to 8 hours. I mean, average 8 hours, 7 hours,
okay.
7 to 8 hours.
Okay, so that's great. So that's actually quite correct. Anything less than 6 hours is kind of maybe not quite right. Anything more than 8 hours is a bit unusual, unless you're a child, where you say it's good to sleep for 8 to 10 hours as a child. But apart from the length of time of sleep, because people are different. I have people that will tell me they've been sleeping for 5 hours for the last 30 years and they're fine. What's actually most important in that sleep is how long you spend in deep sleep. So there's different phases of the sleep. There's a time where you just fall asleep and you're almost like in a dreamlike state. You're kind of not neither on earth or you're just kind of in the middle. And there's a time where you go into deep sleep. And during that deep sleep, your heart rate, if you wear your smartwatch, your heart rate falls, your respiratory rate falls, your body is really repairing itself. So for me, it's, do you know how well you sleep? Because you might be in bed for 8 to 10 hours because you're depressed. People that are depressed don't get up from their bed. They stay there for 14 hours. They are in there, but they're not getting any good sleep. Do you know how long you sleep for? Do you know how deep and refreshing that sleep? Do you wake up feeling refreshed or do you wake up feeling tired? Yes, so that deep sleep is what you should be aiming for. And mental health stress will affect your sleep first. So deep sleep, do whatever you can. Sleep is a whole different topic but I suppose when we do about the tools next week for our mental health, we'll have the tools that sort of help us to sleep and how even our whole bedtime routine, how we sort of wind down so that we can get that deep sleep. Sleep is one of the most important things you need to do for yourself and it will also help your mental health.
Sorry, Dr. Simi. Someone said regarding what your body tells you, I forget things when I'm stressed mentally,
Yeah.
apart from sleep.
Mm.
Sleep deprivation. Also, my eating habits changes. I just eat to stay alive, and I don't really enjoy the food, even food that normally um used to be my favorite. Yeah.
Thank you for reading that. Those are all signs of being under, mental health strain, emotional stress. And as I always say, it's better not to get there. It's just like saying it's better not to develop diabetes than to be managing it. I mean, obviously, if you do get it, you have to manage it. But there are many people that are even diabetic that actually their blood sugars have been normal for years because they then learned to really manage it and they don't take anything for granted. They don't joke with anything. They don't have those, oh yeah, let me just relax. And so you have to be equally militant about your mental health and weed out anything that is going to take away your peace. So, poor memory, forgetfulness, eating inappropriate, not in the right way, not sleeping well, all of those are signs of emotional stress. And if they're not managed properly, it then results in clinical depression. And clinical depression is, in fact, the diagnose for me on an average day now, pre and post pandemic, I think things have gone up maybe double. Most people that will call me now, I'm stressed, I'm depressed, I'm low, I feel like killing myself. It's just way more common. So don't even joke with your mental health. There's no room for allowing yourself or anybody else to steal your joy in any way. So just going on to being motivated and accountable. Motivation is a big thing, and I think the last person that spoke before Sheon talked about motivation. You can't motivate somebody into being motivated. So you can't say to someone, get up now, do your thesis, do your dissertation, write it. You can't do that. And I find many parents And I don't like sounding judgmental, and this is one of the things I hate about no judgment. However, I see many of us as parents doing that to our children. Say, why did you not get to, why did you not? If they could, they don't want to be called by the teacher either. So it's better for you to keep an eye on your children's mental health, because that's one of the things that we overlook. We think that we can just motivate them into being motivated rather than listening to them and saying, okay, why are you not able to do it? What's going on with you? So how do you keep yourself accountable and motivated? It's the same way you keep yourself accountable and motivated in your physical health. It takes time, but with practice, it becomes easy. So for some people, they will not start their day before they've prayed. And they've had to train themselves like that over the years. They were not born like that. For some people, they will not start their day before exercise. They will exercise, they will do all of those things because they know that that will set them up for the day. So it's the same way you look after your physical health that you look at your mental health. One of the questions that we ask a lot in medicine is why. So when we ask about depression, and we ask, oh, have you ever thought about harming yourself or harming anybody or trying to kill you? Do you think that it'd be better off not being here? And if somebody says no, we'll say why. Why have you not thought about killing yourself? It's a very strange question, but the answer gives us a very good insight. And most people will say, oh, I wouldn't even think of that. It's against my religion. Some people will say, actually, I've got children. Why would I do that? I want to be here for them. Oh, no, my family will be very upset if I did a thing like that. And some people will say, I have no reason not to kill myself. I'm just a bit scared, And some people will be like, I've tried a couple of times, just didn't work. So that answer, that when people say, what is your why? We look at it in the context of goal setting and vision and all of that. But that what is your why goes through every aspect of your life. So why do you need to have a good mental state? Why? So let me just throw that out into the audience. Can you just speak up, please? Why is it important for you to be in a state of mental health balance and just being understanding who you are?
Yes.
That's very, very, very important, actually. That's really important, and I must agree with you about the introverted thinker. So some people, some of us, you're in a meeting and they're discussing something, and they finish the discussion before you actually catch up and have a comment on it, because you take time to really reflect, and those kind of people take things on. So you're right to protect your space and curate. I won't call it protect, because protect sounds a bit too. You're curating who you choose to surround yourself with and what you choose to surround yourself with, and that shows agency and autonomy. And that's what we discussed in the first session, that somebody who's mentally healthy can have that agency over their own lives and say, I don't want that person in my space because they're not good for my mental health. I have nothing personal against you. I'm sure you're a great person, but for me, it's not an option. So I think that's also. And Shimon, you were saying something before.
Yes, some people, yeah, I just want to read some comments. Poor mental health could lead to developing physical health and complications. And someone else said, same here. I try as much as possible to stay away from negativity and negative people. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So one of the things we say is that people that have a strong supportive network are motivated to stay healthy. So the people around you are almost one of the most important factors in a healthy mental state. Um, so one of the top things I'll say, look at the people that you surround yourself with. Do they have positive things to say to you, or do they just bring you words that you know are not going to improve you in any way? Are they making you grow? One of the things I said early this year, is that if it's not making me grow, it's got to go. If you're not going to make me grow, you've got to go. You've just got to go. No, it's not because I don't want to be friends, but it's just that it's going to affect my mental state if I'm sitting on the phone with someone and for the next hour we have not talked about how to make money, we have not talked about how to be a better parent, we have not talked about how to be, a better person, we haven't talked about how to, hear the right things, and then all we've talked about, after 1 hour I finish, and I'm, you just feel, no, then there's no need for that. This doesn't mean that there's no place for gisting, because we have friends, and some friends, we just want to just relax and just say, look at what happened there, look at what happened there. But understand that this is a place for that, and quickly also make sure that you guys lift each other up as well, not just continue to to say the wrong words. And this is not peculiar to women, by the way, because one of the things that people say is that, oh, it's women. No, there are men who do the same thing, who are just full of things that are not edifying, and it just states the state of their heart. And it's just trying to improve ourselves to be better. And then the other thing that is also very important in being accountable and motivated is knowing that you have someone that you can share your heart with, because sometimes you don't want to say some things because people see you as a certain person, and you're like, if I say that, then they'll say, oh, maybe I don't fit my brand anymore. So it's, do you have someone that you can speak to that will not judge you and will not give you feedback that you didn't ask for? Because we are very quick, because we are human beings, we're very quick to judge. Oh, I think I've moved the slides on too fast. So um I wanted to talk about shame. I think I've lost a slide about shame. Where is my shame slide? There's a shame slide that is missing here. I don't know where it's gone. So I wanted to talk about shame, and shame is a very strong, it's a very important thing to realize with shame, because it can stop you from being motivated and being accountable. And shame is a very strong negative emotion that usually can cause or be a consequence for mental health. You know, it's this feeling of, or what I'm going through cannot be said, nobody must know, or I'm even ashamed that I'm not coping with life generally, or I'm ashamed that that was done to me as a child or even as an adult. And sometimes we're even ashamed that we are even ashamed. Shame is a very strong emotion. It's a very strong emotion. And there's hardly anyone I've spoken to in my 20-year medical career who's struggling with their mental health that does not have an element of shame. Or if and shame is also deals with blame, a lot of blame. Or maybe if I wasn't there at the time, and maybe this would not have happened. Maybe if I didn't drink that bottle of alcohol at that university thing, I wouldn't have been raped. Maybe if this and that, so shame. I don't know if anybody in the audience has thought about the impact of shame. And it links to the last thing I said about having someone to talk to that does not have feedback for you and does not have judgment for you. It can be a counselor, it can be a very strong, close friend or mentor. Not somebody who's just waiting to hear your downfall, because we do have people like that. And I don't mean to be negative, who, when you tell them, particularly you come across, you are this chief executive of this company, and they're your friend, and you go and tell them that, CEO, my husband has been beating me for the last 5 years. In their mind, they're doing a dance. Say, oh my goodness, so she's not even that perfect. Great, she's being beaten. You have to be very careful who you discuss these things with, because it's not a matter of sharing. It's a matter of sharing with the idea of healing. It's about healing, not about just sharing for the sake of it. So shame. When I look at the slide is missing from here, but I will put it on. Um, what is your experience of shame? How has that affected you in moving forward with what you're supposed to do? Have you ever had to deal with that? I'm aware of the time. We've got 20 minutes. Have you ever had to deal with that, and how do you deal with it? I'm going to take the next slide, which is present, to talk about how you deal with shame. If you want to talk about shame, there's something really pertinent that you want to share, then please put your hand up and just jump in or put it in the comment box. But shame thrives in secrecy. If your child, for instance, someone might have a child with learning disabilities, and maybe you're embarrassed. I don't know why you'll be embarrassed, because it's not your fault. You didn't do anything to cause it. And the child might have a very special skill. Like I have kids that have Asperger's who are amazingly talented in the IT industry, right? So maybe you have something like that. It thrives in secrecy. Name the emotion that you're feeling. Bring it to life. We need to talk about it, bring it out. It quickly loses power. Write down why this issue is causing you shame and what can you do about it. For you to be motivated and accountable for mental health, you have to deal with shame. The final slide that we have, this is my final slide, I think. It's about the duty of care. Duty of care means that, yes, we're learning all of this, and this is our second session. We're learning it for ourselves, but we also need to remember to be our brothers and sisters keepers and to watch out for other people. And sometimes it's very obvious to see when someone is going through a mental health crisis. The topic of this week is, what is your body telling you? And sometimes you can see what somebody else's body is telling them in their way they're behaving, and how do you react? So my example is this. Okay, for instance, you notice somebody who's posting on social media all the time, and maybe they're posting round the clock at very unusual hours. Every 5 minutes they post something. Every 5 minutes they post something, right? And you can either say, "Ah, this person, only God knows why they're looking for attention all the time. They're always posting on social media. They're the only ones." Or you might reach out to them and say, "Hey, is everything okay?" Or reach out to somebody that knows them. But this was a very real life example for me. And in fact, when I noticed this, I was in my son was unwell, and I was in hospital with my son at the time. So I couldn't sleep because I was with my child looking after him. So I could see this person constantly posting on social media. Every 5 minutes there was a comment. And then I was up throughout the night, and throughout the night they were posting on social media. I didn't know them closely personally, but I knew immediately that this person was having a mental health crisis. This is not normal, right? Nobody has time to post every 5 minutes on social media, not even the most prolific social media posters. So I reached out to a friend that knew them around 7 a.m. in the morning, because I couldn't reach out to them at 1 a.m. And the person said, "Oh, I don't really know what's going on, but let me check." Do you know that by the time they found this person, there was no food in their house? Their children were in there and they had not really eaten. This person was completely stark naked and was ranting and raving in the house by themselves. And then they had to be sectioned, taken to hospital, and looked after. So please speak up. That's an extreme example. It might be slightly, maybe not as extreme, but there's nothing wrong with checking on someone and saying, how are you doing? Are you okay? Um, every single person here in this audience today, your mental health has been under strain at some point or the other. Nobody has it sewn down. There's nobody who's an expert. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out and just saying, how are you doing? And don't be in a place of judgment. What somebody else reached out to me, whose child, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and what they had expressed was judgment from the church, about what the child was going through. Please do not, let's stay away from judgment. Understand that it's the mercy of God that you might be experiencing, the grace that you might be experiencing. It's not because you know how to do it. You are doing all you can, but please, duty of care is very important. That's my last slide. So just to conclude, we've talked about all of these things today, about how our body reacts to our mental state and how our childhood experiences can contribute to our physical health outcomes, how important it is to identify triggers for why we behave the way we behave. Some of the things that people came back to talk to me to say about the assignment was irritability, just being irritable, in a bad mood. That's one of the ways your body reacts to being under mental strain. We talked about how to stay motivated and accountable, and the influence of shame on motivation, and also our duty of care. So in our final session next week, this is where we really will be talking about those practical tools that, because you are motivated and accountable, you're going to put into use, the ones that work for you, to keeping your mental state balanced. So after this session, by tomorrow morning, the next chapter of the on the online platform will be ready for you to do a recap, and then to do the assignment for the next week, which is, the assignment will basically be, how do you keep your mental health? So what tools do you use? And it's just those tools that we share, and then we discuss. So if I just take a pause here and hand back to Sister Dupe, is it Dupe or Sheung, to take over from here?
Thank you very much. Just a quick feedback as well. A couple of statements made here that somebody said that the plague of silence Shame is the plague of silence. Shame is the main reason people are silent and do not speak. And then there is a link that's been sent to us for the course of optimizing. I'll hand over. Thank you very much, Dr. Simi. That was very...
Thank you, Dr. Simi. Once again, thank you, Sheung, to my mom and to all the members of the Blossom Network that has always been supporting Sister Christina, Adiola, Munga, Annie, so many people. Kemi, my dear friend, Lee, Sister Tony, Sister Tokwe, everyone, Stella. So thanks so much, everyone. Love you very much. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.